In the pristine master suite of a Chicago mansion, Caleb Hartman, a billionaire used to controlling everything, stood frozen near the door with his hands over his face. Because on the bed, Noah, his 7-year-old son, looked far too weak for a child. Beside him, Lena Parker, the new caregiver, opened a cardboard box that didn't match anything in all that luxury. Photos, letters, a perfume bottle. Memories hidden away like they were forbidden. Caleb stared at the box like a man recognizing a ghost. And Noah, even pale and exhausted, watched it like it was the only safe place in the entire house. There was one tiny detail inside that box that changed everything. And once Caleb understood it, nothing in that mansion would ever be the same again. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Your city, state, or country? The founder of a multi-billion-dollar fintech company, Caleb Hartman, stopped at his son's bedroom door like he was crossing into a territory where not even his money had any authority. Inside, the air was cold, too cold, controlled by a thermostat no one was allowed to touch. In the center of the spotless room, his 7-year-old son lay sunk into pale sheets, eyes half open, carrying a kind of exhaustion that didn't belong on a child's face. Caleb tried to say something, anything, but his voice locked in his throat when he saw Noah's chest rise and fall with effort. Every week followed the same choreography. Tests, specialists, thick printed reports, complicated terms, and that awkward silence at the end. The doctor in charge, Dr. Elaine Brooks, had ordered everything she could think of. Blood work, imaging, allergy panels, rare tests, consults with people who charged a fortune just to say, "We don't know." Caleb watched, impatient, like the answer was hidden in some chart, and everyone else was taking too long to point at it. If you like stories that go deeper than status and luxury, stories that press exactly where it hurts, hit subscribe and stick with me. Because what was happening in that house was not just a phase. No one could call it a simple cold, or laziness, or a tantrum. Noah almost didn't eat. One bowl of soup turned into a slow battle, spoon by spoon, until the boy turned his head away with the expression of someone too tired to even fight. Caleb bought imported vitamins, hired a nutritionist, had the private chef invent perfect recipes, but the boy stayed pale, quiet, distant. And in the end, the worst part wasn't even the lack of diagnosis. It was the feeling that he was losing his own son without knowing why, without knowing what enemy he was supposed to fight. That night, when the mansion went quiet and only the hum of the air conditioning filled the halls, Caleb sat beside the bed and just stayed there, watching his son sleep badly. At one point, Noah moved his lips and let out a sound so faint it barely existed, like he wanted to say something, but gave up halfway. Caleb reached out, touched his forehead lightly, and realized his desperation had already turned into routine. And routine is the cruelest way for a tragedy to hide. That's when he made a decision. If the doctors had no answers, he'd bring someone new into that house. Someone who could see beyond the test results, and maybe beyond everything Caleb refused to look at. The next morning, Caleb, the billionaire who usually solved everything with a phone call, sat in the glass-walled office of his mansion, staring at a folder of resumes like it was a crisis report. He'd already hired perfect caregivers on paper, flawless references, expensive courses, impeccable posture. And they had all left within days, some with polite excuses, others simply disappearing. It wasn't the workload that scared them. It was the atmosphere in that house, the way silence seemed to have more power than any person. When the intercom buzzed to announce the new candidate, Caleb didn't even stand up. He just made a short, tired gesture that meant, "Send her in." In walked a nurse from a simple background, a warm bag over her shoulder and a cheap coat folded over her arm, even inside a house kept at luxury hotel temperature year-round. Lena Parker had the kind of gaze that didn't wait for permission to notice things. She greeted Caleb with respect, but without that exaggerated reverence he was used to from people trying to impress him. "I read what they sent me, Mr. Hartman, but I'd rather see the boy first," she said, straight to the point, like the priority was obvious. In the bedroom, Noah was exactly the same. Too quiet, too weak, eyes drifting away from the world. Instead of flooding him with questions or fluffing pillows like that alone would fix anything, Lena walked over slowly, sat in a chair by the bed, and spent a few seconds just watching his breathing and the way his small hand clutched the sheet. "Hey, Noah, is it okay if I stay here with you for a bit?" she asked softly, without forcing fake cheer. The boy didn't answer with words, but his eyes moved toward her, and that tiny gesture already looked more alive than anything Caleb had seen in days. Caleb expected the same speech as always: routines, meds, rigid schedules. Instead, Lena stood, cracked the curtains open just an inch, and let a thin beam of daylight slip in, like she was testing whether the room still remembered what morning looked like. "I'm not here to fight with him. I just want to understand what he's holding inside," she murmured, more to herself than to Caleb. And that is when he felt a different kind of discomfort for the first time. Because if the problem wasn't he in his son's body, then the next question might be the only one he'd spent years refusing to ask. In those first minutes, Lena didn't try to fix Noah. She simply stayed fully present, like someone who knows some kinds of pain don't move just because you rush them. While the rest of the house ran in silence, soft footsteps from staff doors closing without a sound clocks too expensive to tick out loud, she talked to the boy the way you talk to someone still learning whether the world can be trusted. "What's the last thing you ate that actually tasted good?" she asked casually. Noah hesitated, stared at a corner of the room, and whispered a barely audible, "I don't know," that sounded more like a plea not to push. On the second afternoon, Lena noticed a pattern. The boy reacted differently whenever someone mentioned home, room, or night. He stiffened, like the very environment was heavy on his shoulders. She gently nudged the topic, with the patience of someone who's seen grown adults collapse inside without ever making a scene. "Your dad worries a lot, but I bet there are things you don't know how to explain, right?" Noah twisted the blanket between his fingers, and his eyes glossed for a second. Then he swallowed the tears down like it was forbiddance. Lena didn't rush to smother him with comfort. She let the silence stretch, because sometimes that's where the truth lines itself up to come out. That's when Noah let a broken sentence slip, still not looking at anyone. "He doesn't like when I talk about her." Lena didn't ask who, because the whole house had already answered before the boy opened his mouth. The realization hit her like a cold shock. This wasn't just illness, it was grief, but a grief with no space. Very carefully she asked, "Your mom?" Noah nodded, barely, and turned his face into the pillow like he'd gone too far. In that small motion, Lena understood he wasn't just sad, he was alone with his sadness. Later, in the hallway, Caleb appeared with his phone in hand. Eyes on work emails like that screen could shield him from reality. Lena spoke plainly, without hostility. He misses her, and he feels like that's wrong. Caleb's jaw locked. His wife had died of cancer a few years earlier, and ever since then, the mansion had been cleansed of her, like erasing objects could erase pain. "I did that to protect my son," he said firmly, but there was a tiny quake in his voice. Lena drew a slow breath, because now she knew. For Noah to really get better, someone in that house would have to face what was hidden. And that mansion seemed to tuck secrets into the strangest places, even under the bed. That same afternoon, Lena went back into Noah's room to do something simple. Change the sheets, adjust the air, make the space feel less like a hospital and more like a home. His bedroom was spotless, the faint scent of disinfectant, furniture perfectly aligned, nothing out of place. But the more perfect everything looked, the more it felt like something was missing. like life itself had been scrubbed away with the mess. While she folded a throw blanket, she noticed Noah tracking every movement from the corner of his eye, tense, like a tiny guard protecting a door he couldn't even name. When Lena bent down to pick up a fallen toy, her hand brushed the bed skirt and hit something hard, shoved all the way to the back. She froze. It wasn't a toy. It was that invisible resistance that makes your body warn you before your mind catches up. There is something here. She pulled the skirt back gently and saw a rectangular shadow pressed against the wall. Dust settled over the edges. Noah held his breath. "What's that, Noah?" she asked quietly, not accusing, just opening a crack. The boy dug his fingers into the sheets and let out a shaky, "Don't." Like that box was the last piece of solid ground he had left. Lena didn't yank it out. She met his eyes and said calmly, "I'm not here to take anything away from you. I just want to understand." Then slowly she pulled the box out. It was a sturdy old cardboard box, taped with yellowing strips, carrying a scent that didn't belong in that cold room. A sweet, delicate perfume that seemed to have been trapped there for years. When she lifted the lid, the entire atmosphere in that luxury mansion changed. Inside were old photos, carefully folded letters, a small necklace, a fine fabric scarf, and a nearly empty perfume bottle, like someone had tried to save the smell so they wouldn't lose the person. Noah stared at the box like it was a living secret. His eyes filled, but he didn't wail. He just trembled quietly, lips pressed tight, trying to hold it all together alone again. Lena understood instantly. This wasn't stuff. This was his mother, packed into a hidden hole under the bed because there was no room for her on top of it. And in that moment, Lena felt a heavy truth press against her. If a child has to sleep literally on top of his own memories to keep from losing them, maybe the sickness ISNT in his body, it is hiding where no test ever looks. Lena didn't slam the lid shut. She left it open, like someone cracking a long sealed window after years of stale air. The perfume's scent drifted through the room, mixing with the artificial cold of the AC and creating something strange, almost intimate. Noah kept staring at the box, like someone might walk in and snatch it away at any second. Lena pulled her chair closer to the bed and spoke in a low, steady voice, careful and kind. "You hid this so no one could throw it away again, didn't you?" He didn't answer with words, just gave the smallest nod, and a single tear streaked down his cheek as if he hated himself for letting it escape. Piece by piece, things started to line up. It wasn't a recurring fever, wasn't a virus, wasn't bacteria. It was weight. A constant, crushing weight that doesn't show up on labs and still knocks a body down. Noah lived on high alert, always waiting for someone to discover the box and do what they done to everything else, make it disappear. Food had no taste when you were holding back tears all day. Sleep didn't arrest him because the night dragged memories to the surface. And instead of welcoming them, the room felt like it was policing them. His body was doing what bodies do when the mind has no way out, screaming in the only language it could. Lena thought about all the previous caregivers, all the right but useless attempts, rigid routines, perfect schedules, expensive supplements, enforced quiet so he wouldn't get worse. But the silence was the poison. The whole house treated his mother like a banned subject, and Noah like someone who should move on without ever being allowed to talk. Lena brushed the edge of one of the letters with her fingertips. This is love. And love doesn't vanish just because someone decides to move on, she said. No pretty wrapping, just the raw honesty of someone staring at an open wound. Noah finally cried, not loudly, not theatrically, but like a child who cries when he realizes someone truly understands. And for the first time, Lena saw beyond the boy and recognized the other sick person in that house, Caleb, because only someone deeply broken would turn an entire mansion into a place where the mother never existed. That attempt to protect his son had ended up trapping the boy alone inside a grief far too heavy for his age. Lena took a long breath, closed the box gently, not to hide it, but to prepare for what had to come next, and made the decision that would change everything. She was going to put this truth right in front of Caleb, even if he hated her for it. From that moment on, she couldn't pretend this was just a physical illness. Lena didn't march the box into Noah's room like a piece of evidence. She carried it first to the one place in the house where Caleb still felt in control, his home office. All glass, screens, and cultivated silence. She set the box down on his desk carefully, as if it were something fragile and at the same time dangerous. Caleb came in mid-phone call, furious about some work issue, but his voice faded as soon as he saw the box. His expression hardened instantly, like the cardboard itself was an attack. "Where did you find that?" he asked in a tone that wasn't really a question. It was an order. Lena didn't back down. "Under your son's bed." She let that land, then added, with the same quiet firmness, "He's holding on to this like it's air." Caleb's hand curled into a fist around his own wedding band, and for a second, his face looked less like a CEOS and more like that of an exhausted man. "I had all of it taken away, so he wouldn't get stuck in it," he said automatically, the defense coming out on reflex. But there was a crack in that line, because the truth was, he hadn't done it for Noah alone. He'd done it because he couldn't stand his own pain. Lena lifted the lid slowly. The perfume escaped into the air, and with it came a shift in Caleb's posture, like someone had tugged on an old wire deep inside him. There were the letters, the photos, the delicate necklace, and a picture of his late wife, Amelia, smiling with a younger Noah in her arms. The sight hit him like a silent punch. He stared too long without blinking. "You didn't erase the past," Lena said softly. "You just taught your son that missing her is wrong. And he's paying for that with his body." Caleb reacted the way powerful people often do when pain gets too close. He got angry. "You have no idea what I went through," he snapped. His voice rose, then cracked on the last word. Lena inhaled slowly and answered without attacking back. "I'm not here to judge you. But right now, your son is living like he needs to apologize for loving his own mother." She nodded toward the box. "This isn't sickness. It's grief locked in a cold room. And he's alone in it." Caleb turned away, trying to swallow the knot in his throat. But his reddening eyes said more than he wanted them to. If this part pressed on something inside you, tell me later in the comments what hits you the hardest in stories like this. The child's pain, the father's fear, or the silence that turns into poison. Because sometimes people only realize too late how much damage we don to talk about that can do inside a home. Lena shut the lid gently, stood up, and said the sentence Caleb least wanted to hear. "Protecting isn't erasing. It's learning how to carry it together." He stayed frozen, fighting himself, until his voice finally came out low. "So how? How do I fix this?" Lena didn't answer right there. She just picked up the box and headed for Noah's room. And Caleb followed, like a man about to face the one subject he'd never been able to buy his way around. Caleb, the billionaire who always had answers, walked into his son's room without his usual armor of control. Noah, the 7-year-old who'd been fading inside his own body for far too long, looked at his father with a mix of hope and fear, like a single raw word could freeze the world again. Lena stayed by the door, not inserting herself, just watching. The box sat on the dresser like a heart outside a chest. Caleb rubbed his face, drew a deep breath, and said quietly, "I thought if I took all this away, it would hurt less." Noah didn't respond right away. He just stared at his dad, like he was trying to understand how love had become something forbidden. Caleb sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, still not touching him, as if he were afraid to scare his own child. "I didn't want to see you in pain," he went on, his voice thinning at the end. Then came the line that cut straight through him. Noah whispered, "But I hurt every day," and turned his face into the pillow to hide his tears. Caleb froze, because that sentence was so simple, it was unbearable that he'd somehow missed it. Lena opened the box and slid out a photo. It was Amelia, smiling with baby Noah in her arms. The silence grew heavy, but not with prohibition anymore, with truth finally walking into the room. Caleb took the photo with a trembling hand, and for the first time in years, didn't look away. She had this way of making everything lighter, he said, the word, she scraping its way out like it had been locked up for far too long. Noah leaned in closer, and instead of shrinking back, he studied the image like he could feel his mother in that room again. Caleb's first tear slipped out without warning. He tried to wipe it away quickly, but Noah saw. And seeing his father cry didn't scare him. Strangely, it gave him permission. Noah started crying too, quietly at first, then more freely, like the pain had been waiting months for this opening. Caleb finally reached out and pulled his son into a clumsy, tight hug. "I'm here. I'm here, okay?" he repeated, and it didn't sound like a pretty promise. It sounded like a decision. That same afternoon, Caleb did something no one in that house expected. He had Amelia's portrait taken out of a dusty storage box and placed in the main living room where everyone could see it. It wasn't a grand, showy gesture. It was hesitant, almost shy, like a man apologizing without knowing the right words. Noah walked through the room, stopped in front of the picture, stood there for a while, breathing deep, and then touched the edge of the frame with his fingertips. Lena watched from a distance and realized the mansion had a new sound now. Less air conditioning, more life. But one question still lingered unspoken. What if, even after all the tears and hugs, Noah's body had already gone too far? In the days that followed, Caleb began changing the house from the inside out. It wasn't some overnight movie transformation. It showed up in details. He started walking into his son's room without a phone in his hand, actually sitting down, actually looking him in the eye. Noah was still weak, still pale, but something had shifted. He didn't look alone in that room anymore. Lena noticed first in his breathing, in the way his body softened when he heard his father say his mother's name without choking on it. Caleb and Noah created small rituals, simple things, but huge in the ways that matter. They opened the box together, and instead of treating it like a problem, they treated it like memory. Caleb read the letters one by one, sometimes stopping halfway when his voice broke, and Noah would chime in with a word or two, like he was relearning the sound of his mother's presence at home. In a corner of the living room, they lit a small candle near Amelia's portrait and spent a few minutes there in silence. Not the kind of silence that forbids, but the kind that holds. The mansion didn't become gloomy because of it. It became human. Little by little, Noah's body started to respond as if it had been waiting for this permission. One morning, he asked for food before Lena even nudged him. "Just a little," he said, but he asked. On another day, he agreed to sit in the armchair by the window and watch the street for a while, the way a normal kid would, with curiosity instead of dread. Caleb pretended it wasn't a big deal, but his eyes gave him away. That relief that hurts because you've been waiting too long. Lena saw him slip into the hallway afterward, leaning against the wall, breathing hard and fighting tears like he was clutching something precious. It still wasn't easy. There were nights when Noah woke up scared, calling for his mother in a small, hoarse voice, and Caleb sat on the floor beside the bed, telling the truth he'd avoided for years. "I miss her too." Sometimes they cried again, and there was nothing pretty about it. It was just real. But somehow, every time they shared that grief, Noah seemed a little lighter, as if love, when it isn't hidden, turns into strength. At the end of one of those days, Lena put the box away, but not under the bed. She set it on a high, visible shelf, like a quiet statement. This belongs to this house now. Caleb glanced at her and nodded in wordless agreement. As she turned to leave, she saw Noah studying one last photo in his hands, and there was something different in his eyes, like he wanted to ask for something, but hadn't found the courage yet. Caleb noticed it too, and in that moment, both of them understood. The healing had already begun, but they needed one last gesture, one final proof, for Noah to truly believe that no one would erase his mother from that house ever again. After a long shift, Lena came home to her small apartment, body begging for bed and mind still trapped in that mansion's old silences. The hallway smelled like cheap cleaner and stale coffee, a world away from the carefully controlled fragrance of the corridors where she worked. When she opened her mailbox, she found an envelope thicker than usual. No logo, no corporate heading, just her name written by hand. That alone said a lot. This wasn't from a billionaire's assistant. It was from a man trying to speak for himself. She climbed the stairs slowly, set the envelope on her kitchen table, and before she even unfolded the letter, a photo slipped out. Noah, the boy who could barely lift his head a short time ago, stood outside on the mansion lawn, holding a soccer ball like it was a trophy. His smile wasn't exaggerated or staged. It was that shy, real smile of a child remembering how to be a child. Lena stared at the picture for a few seconds in silence, feeling her chest tighten in that good, painful way, like the image had pushed air deeper into her lungs. The letter came next, written in simple, direct lines. Caleb, the father, the billionaire, wasn't trying to sound strong or polished. He was just honest. He wrote that Noah had eaten on his own for the first time without a fight, that he'd slept better, that he'd asked to keep the box somewhere everyone could see, because now we don't have to hide it anymore. In one section, he admitted something he'd never said out loud. Clearing the house of his wife's things had been his way of surviving, but it had become the way his son got sick. He thanked Lena for having the courage to lay the truth on the table when everyone else preferred to pretend. Lena folded the letter carefully and looked at the photo again. She didn't think about money, or a bonus, or some neat happily ever after. She thought of that simple scene, a father and son breathing in the same room without being afraid of their own memories. Outside, the city kept roaring, indifferent as always. But in that little kitchen, for a few seconds, the world went quiet in the right way. And she understood. Some kinds of healing never show up on a scan. They show up in a house that finally stops running from what it loves. That night, the mansion still looked luxurious from the outside, but on the inside, it was no longer a frozen house, pretending nothing had happened. Caleb learned, the hard way, that control doesn't heal longing, and that a child doesn't need a perfect father. Just a present one, willing to look pain in the face without running away. Noah, who seemed to be disappearing day by day, started to come back in small signs. A plate nearly empty, a shy smile, a gaze that no longer apologized for missing his mother. The box never went back under the bed. It stayed where it should have been from the beginning, out in the open as part of their story. Because the truth is, no one erases someone they love and walks away untouched. And when father and son finally let themselves remember together, slowly, honestly, the house gained sound, breath, and life again. It wasn't the miracle of some expensive drug. It was the courage to feel. And you, what would you have done in Caleb's place? Tried to scrub away every trace to protect, or sat with your child in the pain from the very start? Which part of this story hit you hardest? The box, the silence, or the moment they finally cried together? If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Because here we do talk about wealth, but especially about what money will never be able to buy. presence, courage, and real love.